Welcome to Growing Better Together, a new show from the Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission where we connect with key leaders and explore the policy, partnerships, and opportunities shaping the future of Central Ohio.
Welcome back to Growing Better Together. This podcast is about having a conversation with Central Ohio leaders. The first few episodes were with local government leaders or elected officials, but today's conversation is going to be a little bit different. What's great about Central Ohio is we have so many different assets, but one that's a really big one is our unique defense assets. You know, I've worked at MORPC for several years, and in that work, I have the opportunity to work with local governments, members of the business community. But whenever I talk to folks, I mention how we do defense work. And it's always, a little bit surprising to people when I mention that work. We'll talk about it a little bit more later, but we facilitate a group called the Central Ohio Defense Group, which is a coalition of about 6 different partners working together to elevate our unique defense assets. And through that work, I've really had the privilege of working with the 121st Air Refueling Wing and have gotten to know Colonel Powers, who's the commander at that base. And I welcome Colonel Powers to Growing Better Together. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Joe. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, really honored. It's been fun getting to know you over the years. So we'll just start off. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what attracted you to serving in the military.
Sure. So you're talking about like going back like historical.
Yeah.
Sure.
Let's go back to the 20th century.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
No, I grew up exposed to the Ohio Air National Guard specifically. I'm a second generation guardsman. My father was a pilot. And I just kind of got exposed to that early on, knew that I wanted to be a pilot. The nice thing about the National Guard, whether it be the military at large or the reserve, active duty military or the reserve component, they teach skills and trades, and there's college benefits. So like many, leverage the military for college benefits to pay for a degree, but once you're there, you really find that it's the people, and that's why I'm still there. Everybody around me, all the people that I get to work with every day, both at Rickenbacker and across the Air National Guard, the Ohio National Guard, just truly amazing people, absolutely special people to work with.
That's fantastic. So when you were younger, what decided you to go into the Air National Guard specifically?
Yeah, so again, just kind of that exposure. I had an opportunity on various Guard weekends, and just a little bit of background. The Ohio National Guard is comprised of the Army National Guard and the Air National Guard. I'm in the Air National Guard. It's also a reserve component of the Air Force. But the National Guard is a part-time force predominantly. So most of our people do this. You'll hear sometimes maybe on the commercials, the 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks a year type commitment. And that's really a misnomer in today's day and age with the amount of readiness that we have to maintain. But that's the basic requirement that most people understand when they hear reserve component. But again, that early exposure coming out, learning about the National Guard, having a father that was involved, just say, hey, that's something I want to do. It's the ability to serve, the ability to give back to others, to be a part of your community is very important, a very rewarding part of the job. And then the neat thing about the National Guard that a lot of people don't understand is that we're predominantly a community-based force as well. So in the state of Ohio, there are armories on the Army National Guard side spread all over the state. And there's a number here in Central Ohio. The Air Guard tends to be clustered into larger organizations. There's 4 major wings in Ohio. Again, the 121st Air Refueling Wing at Rickenbacker is the largest here in Columbus. But there's also wings in Toledo, Mansfield, and Springfield. And then we have some geographically separated units in the Port Clinton, the Zanesville, and the Blue Ash areas. So it's kind of a large footprint, but it's that spread out force. So you see it's all across the state. And as I mentioned, the Army Guard armories, they're not in every county, but they're in quite a few.
Right.
So really out there, rather than having one large major base, they're just kind of spread across the communities that we live and we serve in. So it's an interesting, unique thing about the National Guard.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. So a lot of MORPC staff and a lot of community leaders might know about the 121st Air Refueling Wing at Rickenbacker, but a lot of listeners don't. So
Sure.
what is it? What's the mission?
Sure.
Yeah.
So the 121st Air Refueling Wing is comprised of a little over 1,200. The number varies a little bit. Right now it's about 1,211 military and civilian airmen who operate 12 KC-135R Stratotankers, and that's the backbone of the United States Air Force's air refueling capability. So our major purpose is to provide that air refueling capability, for refueling other aircraft in flight and agile combat support. So all those things you need to sustain aircraft, to enable people, and to project power forward. All of that wrapped up in, that is the mission of the 121st. You kind of sum it up by our mission statement is prepare, deter, execute. And really what that means is that we prepare ready, resilient airmen who are capable of, who stand ready to answer the call at a moment's notice, whether it's providing disaster response support to civil authorities in times of domestic emergencies, or deterring our potential adversaries that might want to jeopardize our American ideals. Or if deterrence fails on order, we will execute our core air refueling, those agile combat support capabilities to deliver that combat air power anywhere, anytime that our nation needs.
Could you just provide like maybe a recent example when folks at the 121st were called to help
Sure.
with a national or global issue?
Yeah, I can actually talk to both of those. Both here at home, Ohioans helping Ohioans helping North Carolinians. Just going back a few years, the National Guard, both the Air and the Army National Guard in Ohio, and really all of the National Guards across the United States, were heavily tasked during the COVID epidemic. Everything from enabling and supporting and augmenting hospital staff, to assisting in jails, to distributing food through area food banks, to helping health agencies administer COVID vaccines. You name it, the National Guard was out across the communities providing support. That's probably the largest mobilization of the National Guard since World War II, was COVID response. Shortly after COVID, we saw Air National Guards, specifically some 121st Air Refueling members, helping out in the Indian Lake region, Logan County region, after the tornadoes. So right there, that's Ohioans helping Ohioans, kind of one of our bread and butter missions, bread and butter purposes. And then another more recent example is Hurricane Helene came up the coast in late 2024, fall of 2024, and had particularly devastating flooding in the North Carolina region, specifically the mountain areas. And we deployed our fatality search and recovery team to help local authorities in North Carolina conduct search and rescue operations in the immediate aftermath of that hurricane passing through. And that's a story that I like to highlight, that team is almost entirely drill status guardsmen, or those part-timers. And from when Ohio got the call from North Carolina that we need help, they were boots on ground supporting North Carolina authorities in less than 30 hours. And so you think about that, that's us calling them at home, saying, hey, we need you to come in, get your gear ready, get marshaled, and drive your vehicle's convoy down to North Carolina and get it up and operating in just that short amount of time. And true demonstration of the citizen soldier, citizen airman nature of the National Guard.
Yeah, thank you so much for your leadership and service. I know with the tornadoes last year, a lot of folks in our community were deeply impacted by that, so thank you. So you're the commander of the 121st Air Refueling Wing. What does that entail?
Well, really my job is to provide resources, remove obstacles, give people the time and the space to do great things, and then get out of the way.
Yeah.
It is helping build that common vision, that common purpose for the organization.
So when folks say lead, follow, and get out of the way, you respond, I get out of the way?
You can do all of those, really. No, but it's really, most importantly, is getting the resources that our airmen need to do their job. As not unique to the 121st, not unique to even the military. We're in a busy time. Global trends, global changes are continuing just general resource constrained environment that we're in today. We need to find new and innovative ways to do things. And that's been kind of a mantra for a while now, but to really be creative on how we get after the problem sets and the challenges today. So really, my role as the leader is to kind of set the conditions to allow that innovation to incubate and grow, and ensure that our people have everything they need to do the jobs when they're ready to do their jobs when they're called upon.
Thank you for that. It doesn't sound like there's a lot of typical days. Is there?
There are not. As a matter of fact, there are really no typical days. Every day is a little bit different. Our wing is a heavily engaged wing. We deploy regularly on our federal mission overseas. We had a large team deploy over the October to March timeframe. It was part of our regular recurring deployment cycle for that agile combat support. So think everybody that protects the base, provides communications infrastructure, firefighting, logistics support. All of that and more is wrapped up in that agile combat support capability. And so we had a number of people, a large contingent, about 10% of the wing, out for 6 months. And we really saw them go to different spots around the world. We had teams in the Indo-Pacific region. We had teams in the European Command region. We had teams in the Central Command region. So really very geographically diverse application of our missions. And then more recently, we deployed our aviation and maintenance package consisting of the KC-135s themselves and air crew and maintainers to the Indo-Pacific region as part of our standard rotational cycle there. And so we really see a lot of deployments, a lot of engagement from the wing in our federal missions. And then we have our Title 32 organized, train, and equip missions that we do to build that combat readiness and to prepare people to be ready to go out the door at a moment's notice, again, for that domestic emergency or domestic response support to our overseas combat missions.
So the 121st Air Refueling Wing is an asset because of all the services you provide to the state, the country, and the world for that matter. But also from a jobs perspective, just the broader defense community in Central Ohio, there's 8,000 jobs that impact the region. That's part of the reason I alluded to earlier, the Central Ohio Defense Group, where we really try to get communities working together to see how we can be an asset to the defense installations here in Central Ohio. Could you elaborate a little bit about the partnership of the Central Ohio Defense Group in your capacity as commander of the 121st Air Refueling Wing, and then maybe talk a little bit about the Association of Defense Communities?
Sure. So the programs you're talking about are kind of under some broader umbrellas of the Department of War's Office of Local Defense, Community Cooperation, and the Air Force's Community Partnerships divisions within the services. And they are really looking for ways that military organizations can build relationships with surrounding governmental and in some instances non-governmental entities to really, as I mentioned earlier, we're in an environment where we have to be creative and approach things differently. And maybe there's a way that we can pool our resources, pool our buying power, for lack of a better term. We have very similar issues in terms of general training needs. Think skills training, like vehicle maintenance or engine maintenance. There's a lot of things that carry over to the civilian world from the military world. Everybody needs roads repaved, and so there's a number of areas where we can work together to leverage our buying power. That when we buy at scale, it reduces the unit cost for multiple entities out there, and that's an example of that. Mentioning just the broader defense community, we're really grateful to enjoy wonderful support from the Central Ohio community specifically. We've had a long-standing relationship with the Columbus Regional Airport Authority and several of the entities around. And we've been able to help those entities get funds through federal programs like the Franklin County Engineers Office recently got build grant, and I'm going to butcher the
Alum
acronym.
Creek Drive?
Alum Creek Improvement Corridor, which connects Rickenbacker to 270. And that supports literally thousands of military personnel, most of them part-time, that are stationed and based at Rickenbacker. And it just there's defense value in that. Similarly, the Columbus Regional Airport Authority recently, about 2 years ago now, was awarded a nearly $9 million grant through the Defense Community Infrastructure Program to rehabilitate the inside runway at Rickenbacker, which ordinarily would, from an FAA funding standpoint, doesn't meet the threshold because of the number of sorties flying from Rickenbacker, but it's truly a very strategic asset for the military and for the 121st. And so for us to be able to work together to get that, to keep that capability viable for our region is incredibly important.
It's really helpful for us as well because we facilitated the defense group for I'd say about 8 or 9 years now. And Steve Tugin chairs that initiative. But when we have our regional policy roundtable, which is local government leaders focusing on public policy issues, we actually just had the meeting today, is we always have a defense update on what's going on at the Defense Supply Center of Columbus, what's happening at the 121st Air Refueling Wing, what DSIP projects do we need to advocate on. So it's really helpful to convene and learn from you, but also we can help report out on what's going on and what are the priorities in the region. So it's just a really, really important tool. Speaking of important tools, one thing is there's a intergovernmental support agreement. The acronym is an IGSA.
Yes.
And this is something we've been looking into here in the region as a potential tool in regards to reducing costs with the Department of War, but also generating revenue in Central Ohio. Could you tell us a little bit about that tool and how it could benefit the region?
Sure. So, from my understanding, my perspective, the Intergovernmental Support Agreement is essentially a non-traditional contracting mechanism where there's an established relationship between the military entity and its surrounding governmental body. And again, like I was alluding to earlier, where there's those shared challenges or goals that we each need to do, whether it be training or procuring a particular thing or again, that infrastructure improvement modernization. We all have similar needs in that way. So if that intergovernmental support agreement is a mechanism by which the military can leverage essentially the contracting mechanism of that surrounding governmental entity, or in some instances even that some governmental entities may have their own roads departments or something like that. Is there a way that type of service could be provided to the military at a more reasonable or lower cost than through the traditional contracting mechanism? And the idea is that these build resilience both in the military community, but also in the surrounding community as well.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. One thing that's always interesting about talking to folks in the military, whether it's you or other folks in the Central Ohio Defense Group, is planners and working at MORPC and working with the state or federal government. There are so many acronyms. Go to a defense-related meeting.
Oh yes.
I mean, so much of it goes over my head. Just sidebar here. How long does it take to understand the language of defense?
Well, Joe, you probably need a couple of years to gain fluency, but it's a dynamic and ever-evolving language.
Yeah.
And at some point, when you realize that there are acronyms within acronyms, you get to that PhD level.
Yeah. I am not at the PhD. I'm like pre-K level when it comes to some of those defense acronyms. So we talked about the KC-135, but there's also a unique opportunity for the 121st Air Refueling Wing with the KC-46s.
Yes.
Could you elaborate on that opportunity and the impact it would have on the region?
Sure. So the Air Force right now is in the midst or in working towards modernizing, really recapitalizing the KC-135, which is, I mentioned earlier, it is the principal air refueling asset in the United States Air Force. It is the backbone of our air refueling capability. And air refueling really gives the Air Force and the U.S. military writ large its global capability to respond quickly. You can't really do anything without air refueling. The KC-46 for us would bring us to the forefront of the Air Force's air refueling capability. It is based on the Boeing 767 platform. It has far more fuel efficiency, better communications and connectivity, and has the ability to refuel both Navy and Air Force aircraft on the same mission, whereas the KC-135 needs to make adjustments on the ground before we do that. So really it would bring the 121st to the forefront of the Air Force's air refueling capability.
Thank you for that. One thing that I've learned going to the 121st several times is the unique partnerships that state National Guards have with countries overseas.
Sure.
Could you talk a little bit about that? It's really interesting.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. It is. So you're talking about the National Guard State Partnership Program.
Yeah.
That came into being really after the end of the Cold War, early 90s. The U.S. was looking for a way to build partnerships and trust and communication and bonds with some of the former Eastern European countries. I think it started out in the Baltic states and started expanding out to where it is now. There's more than 107 partnerships, I think the number is, around the world today between the 54 National Guards, we think the 50 states, the territories, and the District of Columbia. So a lot of partnerships around the world. It's a very unique program, one trust and cooperation are probably the two biggest outcomes from it. Ohio specifically, we have been partnered with Hungary since 1993 and Serbia since 2006, I believe. We're looking to establish a third partnership right now. That's in the works. But it is, from the National Guard's perspective, we are doing military to military engagements. So think interoperability, think about working together to solve problems, to understanding each other's cultures and how to better communicate. Those are all desired effects and outcomes of the state partnership program. And it's all in line with the Department of War's objectives and the Department of State's objectives for the region or for that country. But from the state partnership program, something that's unique about it is actually affords some opportunities for kind of like a whole of society or whole of community approach to partnerships as well. So, Ohio's partnerships with Hungary and Serbia have led, from the National Guard to the Serbian or the Hungarian military partnership has led and enabled partnerships and engagements beyond the military. So we've set and opened doors for commerce, for education, for health engagements, just kind of a number of different areas where, again, it's kind of more of almost that whole of society where it's growing into.
Yeah, it sounds like it has a really lasting impact, and we're happy to have you on Growing Better Together whenever that third country is engaged. So we always kind of close with a couple traditional questions. So in your capacity as commander of the 121st, what's one thing that's really energizing you right now?
Yeah.
And then what keeps you up at night?
From the energizing perspective, it's our people, really, first and foremost. The challenges I was alluding to earlier, we are an organization that our principal purpose is to generate and maintain combat readiness. We're doing that in an environment of a high operations tempo just because of everything that the military is frequently asked to do. And we're doing it with a predominantly part-time force in an era where in that constrained resource budgeting environment. And so it really requires us to take that different approach to thinking and how we're getting after stuff. You really can't do more with less. You have to do things differently. And so seeing some of the greatness coming out of the wing is what really motivates me and excites me. There's been some things that have had Air Force-wide impact. So the KC-135, venerable, amazing, reliable airplane. It was fielded in the mid to late 1950s.
Yeah.
The youngest one was built in 1964. And as with every aircraft, occasionally there's going to be some kind of a problem. You're going to have an emergency. You need an emergency procedure to safely recover from that problem. And at the 121st, we saw the development of what's called the KC-135 Quick Reaction Handbook, or basically an in-flight emergency procedures update, where we have taken the KC-135 emergency procedures and taken that out of like a PDF, some of it's checklist, some of it's paragraph, some of it's bold, some of it's not, but a really, basically a human factors nightmare of trying to navigate emergency procedures to successfully respond to problems, and brought it into a modern era tool, even like the civilian airlines use. So it's all iPad, it is tablet-based, not necessarily iPad, but tablet-based, and it's interactive, where a pilot says, "Hey, this light's on," and it will take them to the checklist. It has everything laid out sequentially. So this really represents the most significant advance in KC-135 flight manual and emergency procedures since the aircraft was fielded. It really brings the KC-135 into a modern aviation era, and that was that idea popped up and really came to fruition through the 121st.
That's fantastic.
And we've been helping AMC lead, flight test and lead the implementation of that across the total force. So active duty KC-135s, Air Force Reserve KC-135s, Air National Guard. We see things like augmented reality, virtual reality training in our maintenance and in our some of our allied support fields that really creates optimized and similar outcomes with training in a smaller time frame. You can look at an aircraft motor and do a 3D takeaway of it and find the various parts, and you can go through the pre-flight and maintenance procedures on a much quicker time. And so seeing things like that. And then we're testing all kinds of new stuff with partnerships with the Air Force Research Lab and the Air Force Institute of Technology at Wright-Patterson. Everything from engine cowlings designed to improve fuel efficiency to antenna and wire placement to increase communications capability and also fuel efficiency. So a number of different things.
No doubt, no doubt. Thank you for sharing that. So it's 2050. We're in the future.
Yes.
What, where do you see the 121st Air Refueling Wing in 2050?
Sure. Well, ideally we see them flying either the KC-46 or whatever the next generation air refueling platform is that the Air Force fields beyond the KC-46. We see them, ideally we see the 121st continuing to be a key player in Ohio and in the nation and in the world that it has been. Ideally we see the wing continue to develop some amazing patriots that are ready to serve, that we see the wing continue to develop the future enlisted and commissioned leaders of both the Ohio Air Guard and the United States Air Force, and that we see, again, the 121st playing that critical role in safeguarding liberty and security for Ohio and the United States of America.
I have one very easy, simple question right after this.
Okay.
When was the last time you were in the air, and when's the next time you're going to be up at the air?
Well, ironically, I tried to fly on Saturday. The jet broke, as they sometimes do, so that didn't quite work out. I'm scheduled to fly to, today's Tuesday. I'm scheduled to fly Thursday.
Nice.
So we'll see how it goes.
I'm jealous. Colonel, thank you so much for your leadership to our country, our state, and to our region. It's been a true pleasure getting to know you over the past several years. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Absolutely. Likewise. Appreciate the invitation. It's always great to see you, Jay.
Yeah, likewise, Colonel.